Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today for our webinar on Better EQ, Better Workplace Performance for you, your teams, and your organizations. Today's webinar is hosted by TalentSmart EQ, and for those of you who aren't familiar with us at TalentSmart EQ, we are the world's premier provider of emotional intelligence training, assessments, certification, and coaching. We've been in business for almost 20 years in the learning and development space, and everything that we do is all centered around emotional intelligence or EQ. Additionally, some of you may be familiar with our book as well, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, and our co-founders, Dr. Jean Greaves and Dr. Travis Bradbury. Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is a bestseller for a number of years now. It came out in 2009. And it's a Wall Street Journal's bestseller and routinely recurring title on all of the bestsellers lists. So you might have heard of us that way as well. So before I do want to jump in and get started for today's webinar, I do want to take care of a few quick housekeeping items. For those of you who are not familiar with the GoToWebinar system, on the right-hand side of your screen, you should see your GoToWebinar panel, and there is where you can adjust your audio and your video settings. Additionally, you should see a section towards the bottom of your panel with a little arrow that says questions. We will be taking questions during today's webinar, and we'll be devoting a portion at the end of the webinar purely for Q&A. So at any time throughout today's webinar that you have a question, feel free just to type it into that question box, and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can at the end. Additionally, today's webinar will run for about 45 minutes. We do have a lot of content to cover, so buckle up. We will be recording it, so anybody hopping on late today or anybody who needs to hop off early, no worries at all. We will be sending a recording to everyone who registered. They'll get that about 1 hour after the webinar completes. Additionally, we will be providing a survey at the end of the webinar that will populate as soon as we close out the webinar. We really do appreciate that feedback at TalentSmart EQ. It really helps us continue to do these webinars and to make them better and better each time. So it's a quick 5 to 6 question feedback survey, and we really would appreciate your feedback. So without further ado, I would love to go ahead and get started today and introduce our team at TalentSmart EQ. As I said, my name is Kate Barsby. I am the Director of Marketing here at TalentSmart, and I'll be in the driver's seat today as our chauffeur and our technical producer as well. I am joining us from sunny San Diego, TalentSmart headquarters. Additionally, joining us will be Sue DeLazaro. Sue is our Vice President of Programs at TalentSmart, and she'll be our subject matter expert and our tour guide for today. Sue is joining us from Maryland. So without further ado, I would love to take the opportunity and introduce Sue and have her say hello to everyone. Sue, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, Kate. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you great.
Okay, great. I'd love to say hello to everyone who's joining. Thank you so much for joining this session wherever you are calling from. I am on the chilly eastern shore of Maryland, and I'm so happy to be here.
Great, thanks, Sue. So why don't we jump right in and get started, and you can share with us what we're going to cover in today's webinar.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. So before we jump in too far, I wanted to start off by saying that today, in case I forget, today is about you, your teams, and your organizations. So as we go through today, please keep that in mind. Now let's talk about what's on this slide. This is fun. It's so impressive to see that 2 respected organizations like LinkedIn and the World Economic Forum have listed emotional intelligence as one of their most important skills needed for success based on their research. This time last year, LinkedIn did a survey, and it ended up being about 7,000 working professionals that responded. And they asked for what the top skills were that were needed. EQ made the list. Also, EQ made the prestigious World Economic Forum's top 10 list for most important skills needed for 2020. So there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. So these are some impressive impressive organizations and really resonating that EQ falls onto, both of their lists for last year and moving into this year as well. And on a related note, I did mention this at the beginning of the webinar, but I just want to remind everyone that we're going to be using two terms today, EQ and emotional intelligence. And for those of you who aren't super familiar with emotional intelligence, just be aware that we're going to be that's the same thing. So anytime we use those two terms interchangeably, just know that we're always talking about emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Okay,
also, on a related note, World Economic Forum actually estimated too that the demand for EQ skills, as you see on the slide here, is actually going to increase about 6-fold in the next 3 to 5 years. So not only have we seen that EQ was important last year, but it's only going to continue growing.
Yes, absolutely. And, I'm happy to say that those surveys were conducted before COVID-19 hit. And I'm sure we can all agree that COVID has challenged us in new and different ways we probably hadn't imagined before. So you can bet that emotional intelligence is needed now more than ever. I think pre-COVID thinking, people thought that EQ was important and relevant just because there's so much more automation and technology today. And, frankly, there are some things that technology just can't replace. You think about a customer service rep that's using emotional intelligence with technology to provide a smooth and personalized experience, or a salesperson who's using emotional intelligence to build those deep and loyal relationships. Think of a medical team who needs to use EQ to communicate with empathy. Think of the bedside manner and being able to just interact effectively under all kinds of pressure. So, that was certainly pre-COVID thinking. Now add COVID on top of that. Bottom line, wherever you stand in your organization, EQ is becoming an increasingly significant factor of success across all levels, all industries, making the case for us to dive a little bit deeper today.
Yes, and with that being said, Sue, why don't we jump right into our poll to see what everyone who is with us today is actually thinking in regards to EQ.
Okay, great, let's do it.
So I'm going to launch a poll and all of you will see this pop up on your screen, and go ahead and select the answer that resonates the most with you. So given what we experienced in 2020 and also what we're currently experiencing, how important are EQ skills to you? So please go ahead and select one of the following. Is it absolutely critical? Maybe it's important, or just somewhat important, or maybe you don't consider it important at all and it hasn't really been a topic of conversation at your organization. So go ahead, we'll just give it another minute or two. Sue, I do see the responses coming in, so we'll just give it another second here. So thank you everyone for responding. So I'm gonna go ahead and close this poll and actually share our results. Pretty impressive. We're actually seeing that 74% of you actually do see EQ as absolutely critical, with a little bit with less, 24% seeing it as important. But the interesting thing, nobody sees it as not important. So I think we're all here for the right reasons today. So
absolutely. Well, let's get started. I'm so happy to see these results. We're all in the right place, which is right here, right now. And yeah, let's get started. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to talk about today. First, we'll define EQ, and we'll talk about what it really means for you, your team, and your organization. So first and foremost, let's talk about what EQ is. It is your ability to recognize, your ability to understand emotions, and your skill at using this awareness to manage yourself and your relationships. It's made up of the 4 EQ skills that you see here on screen: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. I think I may have said this before, maybe I haven't, I don't know. I say it so much, frankly, but emotional intelligence is a skill, and it's something that you can learn and practice and improve on. So it's really why we're all here today. Okay. So I know I mentioned this a couple of minutes ago also, but I wanted to show you a little more from the LinkedIn survey and the World Economic Forum list. So you can see not only where EQ falls on the list, but also see that EQ is in very good company with all of these other important skills. What we know about EQ is that it's a foundational skill for everything that you see on screen here, whether it's the LinkedIn list, the World Economic Forum list, or the tree leaves that you see. And, you know, when we talk about really why, all of these skills have one thing in common, and there's an emotional component to each of them. Emotional intelligence is about knowing ourselves, knowing our tendencies, so that we can choose what we do and say in an effective way. And it's about observing and understanding the emotions of others so that we can walk in others' shoes and have effective relationships. So ultimately, emotional intelligence equips us with foundational skills to be more effective with what you see on screen, and also a whole host of other skills that aren't on screen. So without further ado, let's jump forward and get to some specifics. Okay, so let's talk about some benefits here. First, there are some major benefits with emotional intelligence and how it impacts your work. EQ makes you better at work. That's the shorthand answer. At Talent Smart over the years, we've tested emotional intelligence alongside a few dozen other important workplace skills. And what we found is that EQ is the strongest predictor of performance. It explains a full 58% of success in all types of jobs. So it's a true differentiator in terms of differentiating one person from another. We also found that 90% of people who are considered to be top performers in their organization are also high in emotional intelligence. So it's pretty neat statistic. And the third bullet here, it's kind of fun. High emotional intelligence people also earn an average of $29,000 more than their counterparts with the lower EQ.
Those are some impressive numbers. And Sue, before we go any further, I do want to share with everyone that this is information that also is provided. This research is also provided in an article that we have written, and I have shared the link to that article with all of you right in the chat section. So for everyone listening, feel free to save that link. And if you don't worry, we will be covering that again at the end and providing that to all of you. But I just did want to make you aware of that we do have more literature that kind of speaks to all the specifics regarding this research.
Okay,
So
thank you,
continue.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so another huge benefit, EQ improves your quality of life. So how so? So this is probably not a news flash, but we are emotional beings and we experience dozens and dozens of emotions in a day. They're part of our biology. We cannot shut them off. So how aware we are of them and how we manage them, again, is a differentiator from others. So unprocessed, unmanaged emotions basically lead to greater stress and anxiety, which can weaken the immune system. When we looked at a study, it was a study that looked at tension, fear, and anxiety in women over the course of 20 years. They found that people that were less skilled at managing their emotions experienced higher levels of stress and actually ended up being twice as likely to develop breast cancer compared to women who were more skilled at managing their emotions. In addition, EQ has also been found to speed up the recovery that people have from serious illness like cancer and heart attacks. People high in emotional intelligence, they also know how to make the most of their emotions. They know how to plan for tough moments and bad days, which are inevitable. For an example, they might view failure as an opportunity to grow. They also know how to make the most of those good moments. They can savor the good moods, and they don't let small things interfere with their big picture goals, their big picture happiness, which is pretty awesome.
So that's really telling, Sue, not only that EQ, that it just has an impact for all of us and how successful we are on the job, but really that resonates to our home life and overall life in general. Practicing EQ skills and developing EQ really has an impact on our overall quality of life, which I think is telling for, why it's showing up on these lists as, a crucial skill that's really needed today.
100%. Absolutely. Okay. So here's the next big benefit. Teams that are skilled in emotional intelligence are actually more successful at achieving goals, problem solving, and completing tasks quickly than their less emotionally intelligent teams. So this is a very big log here, and that represents a team achieving goals together. We all know that the bulk of work at organizations is done by teams, and teams have their own EQ. On a high EQ team, performance of the group can be seamless, and there you're going to see innovation, creativity, honesty, trust. A high EQ team knows their strengths, they know their weak spots, and they can easily exceed the capabilities of any one member of the team.
Now, Sue, you did just mention a high EQ team and that teams actually have their own EQ, but we also just additionally spoke about individual EQ. So I think it would be helpful for everyone today if you could share what the actual difference is between individual EQ and a team's EQ.
Sure. That's a great point. So high level EQ on the individual level impacts individuals, performance, health, happiness, wellness. With a team, we're no longer talking about one person. Instead, we're thinking about the team as a unit, like again, with what you see on this slide. A team at the group level has their own emotions, their own way of managing those emotions as a unit, and ways of interacting with people and groups outside of their team. Here, the team is moving together and they're performing and achieving goals as a unit. If we were talking about individuals, they wouldn't be working as a unit.
Definitely, Sue, and it's actually worth even mentioning that at Talent Smart, we've recently come out with a unique offering that's picked up a lot of traction just within the last couple of months. It's a program, an assessment devoted entirely to emotional intelligence on the team level. And I think we're seeing the interest in that really growing, specifically now as we're all still in the midst of a pandemic and many of us have moved to a remote type of environment where we're having to to deal with these new challenges, new ways of working, but still be very productive within our team. So I think that's why we're seeing that program and Team EQ in general really becoming much more prominent, much more important, and much more definitely something that organizations are seeing an importance in developing.
Yeah, you're right. The buildings have gone away, but the team orientation and expectations have not. So how do you work in this new world? Absolutely. Well, speaking of teams, this picture is funny, and I hope it makes you smile. We put this here to just kind of get real with one another for a moment. The world is a complex place, and what we're finding is that Team EQ can help teams actually tackle the complexities that are, in our lives right now. So Team EQ has been linked to a number of team level skills like what you see here on screen. Collaboration cross-functionally is better. People can develop trust and group cohesion, and they can also manage stress as a team. Again, if you ask why, it's because there's an emotional component to everything that you see here on screen. So if we can become aware that there's this group emotional thing that happens and define it and figure out how to maximize it, a team can definitely achieve more things together than just a couple of individuals.
Now that we've talked about individual team or individual EQ as well as team EQ. I think it would be probably the most important thing is actually addressing EQ from the organizational perspective. So organizations, their initiative to really develop EQ internally and how EQ can really fit into an organization's overall performance. So why don't we go ahead and share that? So,
Of course. Okay, great. So doesn't this look nice where we were all in a building together in the same room, smiling and collaborating? But it's just, such a nice little moment. Um, Building EQ into the fabric of an organization gives everyone, top to bottom, a universal framework to approach work. Um, it enhances a company's ability to create a culture that's inclusive and growing because everyone is working from the same playbook. We're speaking the same language. EQ at the org level has been shown to unify people toward a common mission and makes an organization and its people feel less resistant to change. So think of an organization that enables employees to feel like they're part of something bigger and be able to forge deeper and longer term relationships at work without fear of asking for help, finding mentors, or learning new skills. So that's what emotional intelligence can do when you're bringing it to an organization. And this is all well and good, but I'm here to tell you it also improves the bottom line, which is an important part of the business case. Couple of points here to make that in a seminal case study at L'Oreal, 63%, well, first off, there were salespeople that were hired for emotional intelligence. And when they found that these higher emotional intelligence people were not only staying, 63% were less likely to leave their jobs, they actually outsold their counterparts by about $90,000 a year. It's pretty impressive.
that is really impressive. So, I mean, $90,000 a year. So if you were to even just consider one individual with higher EQ and that type of ability, if you were to multiply that with a team of sales reps that all show or exhibit high emotional intelligence, it has a significant impact on the bottom line. I know you have some other numbers that you want to share with some of our listeners who really resonate with some of these facts and figures.
Yeah. So, just some highlights here that are on screen. There was a 40% increase in engineers' ability to deal with change. This is at a Fortune 200 defense contractor. Another performance measure is that at a Fortune 500 medical center, they saw a 93% improvement in leaders' ability to handle conflict. So those are some pretty impressive and measurable results that definitely show how it impacts the bottom line, emotional intelligence.
Definitely. And, 93% improvement, Sue, in the ability to handle conflict, that alone shows such an impact on the bottom line, too. Because when you think about it, when you're not spending all of this amount of time trying to figure out how to handle an issue or handle, a conflict at work, you can focus on the important stuff, on being productive, efficient, and increasing the bottom line. So these numbers are really telling how emotional intelligence and what many people consider as soft skills, it actually puts these numbers put more weight behind them, and they're the research is telling.
Yep, soft skills, hard numbers.
Yeah, definitely. So before we get to some questions, I do just want to circle back and on what we said up front, that
Sure.
EQ skills are really extremely important, not just for you as an individual, but for your teams and your organizations. And when two really respected worldwide organizations, such as like LinkedIn and the World Economic Forum, are listing EQ on these must-have lists of skills, we should all really sit up and take note of what we can do.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know that we've kind of covered a lot quickly today, and I'd love to just do a quick recap for us, and also give a special little present. We're actually going to share an EQ strategy that we can all walk away with and start practicing as soon as we're finished. So, two takeaways that we have talked about is that EQ is a skill, so it can be learned, it can be developed with practice, and we can tell you how to do that in a myriad of ways. EQ is also a differentiator. So individuals, teams, organizations all can benefit with emotional intelligence. So with that in mind, and this is the new info here, I want to share one of our strategies today that I think would make a really big difference in all of our lives if we started to practice it and become more skilled in it. It's a self-awareness strategy from our book, Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And it's called Quit Treating Your Feelings as Good or Bad. You know, when we experience emotions, there is a natural tendency to judge it and say it's a good emotion or a bad emotion. And when we do that, it's actually harder to understand the emotion and, pull that string. It's harder to understand ourselves. So instead of judging and instead of putting what you're feeling in a box, recognize when you experience the emotion, take a minute and just ask yourself what happened. What brought this emotion on? Why are you feeling it? Understanding the why behind your emotion actually will make you more self-aware, which in turn will make you much better and effective in the long run rather than just judging them. So it's just a way to kind of focus your energy around your emotions so you learn about yourself. And
That's
that's
a
our
really
little
good tip,
present.
Sue. Yeah, that's a really good tip, Sue. And something to think it like just a really simple way of looking at it is even as an example, thinking about, a time when you were angry. All of us have been angry at some point or another. And automatically, many of us probably tend to think like, oh, I don't want to be mad. Oh, I hate this feeling. It's not a good feeling, being mad or angry or frustrated. But there's a reason behind that. And it's not, we don't want to necessarily treat that feeling as a bad feeling, right, Sue?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Just understanding the why behind it can kind of inform and guide you as to, knowing yourself better and how you want to handle yourself.
Such a great point. So with that, we are actually now jumping into our question portion. We did want to make sure that we covered the content in enough time. So I have seen a number of questions come into the question box. So I definitely want to take the time to get through as many of those as we can. A few questions. So feel free, as I shared, go ahead and type them into that question box. We'll try to get through as many of these as we can. First question that has come in, Sue, if you're okay if I just start posing these to you and we can
Please.
plug through as many as we can.
Yep. Sounds great.
Okay, great. This is a great starting question, I think. I want to develop my EQ, so where would you recommend beginning?
Well, that is $1 million question, and I appreciate the listener who wrote that. So it kind of depends, and that sounds like a cop-out answer, but it really does depend on what you want to do. Talent Smart has a lot of ways to help individuals, teams, organizations develop their emotional intelligence. So everything from books, training programs, coaching, free articles on our website. There's a ton of places to start. So I guess what I would say is, whatever you do, we believe in the power of assessing yourself and understanding your current EQ skill level. And once you understand that, you can put a game plan together for what you need to focus your practice on so that you can build up the skill. And if you want to learn more, there are plenty of people at Talent Smart that would love to talk with you about how to bring EQ to yourself or your organization.
Thanks, Sue. Another question that has come in, can I really learn to be emotionally intelligent? It sounds like it's something that either you just have it or you don't. That's a great question. We actually get it a lot.
Yeah. So, we see it as a skill. Because we've had over 2 million people take the emotional intelligence appraisal assessment over, close to 20 years, um, we see that, when people practice and they take the assessment and they practice and they retest, we see those numbers go up. We also hear anecdotally stories from our clients, that talk about all of the differences that can be made, with concerted practice. So you really can learn to be emotionally intelligent. You just need to know what to practice. And then you need to practice over and over and over again until it becomes a habit.
Great answer. Another question that has come in, which I think is really good, is I know we talked about how do you start to where they recommend we begin in developing EQ. This question actually deals with the actual workplace environment. So what is a good practical first step to begin teaching or training our staff in EQ development?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And, we have training programs that we have developed and used over the years with many industries, many levels of people. And, either Talent Smart can come to you. We run virtual sessions that are very engaging and fun. We do, and we also have a train the trainer program. So if you'd like to become certified in our training program, you can do that as well. So there are a lot of different ways. And, we actually have a client solutions team that they're superb, and they're so well versed on helping you think through how many people do you have, when do you want these people to go through something, how much time do you have, what resources do you have. So there's a couple of things to consider, but bottom line, we have training programs that we'd be happy to help you deliver.
Also, another question which I think is a really good question. We have an individual attending our webinar today, Sue, who is retired, and he said,
Okay.
he asked that we mentioned EQ and workplace performance. So does that mean that this is not really for me? I think the short of the long is EQ is for everyone, right, Sue?
It is for everyone. And, we talk about the workplace, but emotional intelligence is for everyone. So if you are interested in emotional intelligence and you are an individual and you're interested, go to talentsmart.com. There are plenty of great resources there for you as well.
Definitely. I know we've gotten a bunch of questions in our question box regarding our Team EQ program. So for those of you who would like additional information about that program, please feel free to just note that in the comments section of your feedback survey, and we can certainly have somebody follow up with you. We do not only have a virtual training program in Team EQ, so that means that we facilitate the program virtually. So we know that many many states are still actually under the stay-at-home orders, and certain areas are. So we are actually doing a lot of virtual training right now. So we're more than happy to speak with you about that. Additionally, we actually even have a trainer certification program in Team Emotional Intelligence. So for those of you who are interested in actually teaching EQ on the team level internally at your organization, we definitely have an option for that as well. Somebody actually asked another great question, Sue, regarding a 360 assessments. You have mentioned that assessments in general are a great place to develop self-awareness, which I 100% agree with. And this question is, would a 360-degree assessment be a good place to start for EQ development? What is your recommendation for a good assessment?
Wow. So we have an emotion. So our assessment is called the Emotional Intelligence Appraisal. And we have a self-assessment, we have a multi-rater, and a 360 assessment. And, finding out how other people experience you in your work life is super important to understanding how you're perceived. And your intentions might be great, but maybe the impact isn't so great. And so understanding that can really help you focus your attention on what you want to develop, because, you know, what we find with our 360s is you will get specific feedback, and you will get feedback on each of the 4 skills, and you'll even get specifics on what you should be practicing or not. So a 360 is a lovely place to start.
Yep. And just as a reminder, when Sue shares the 4 skills, she's speaking about those 4 skills that we did share earlier in the webinar, that are the 4 skills of EQ. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management.
Right, right.
I have an interesting question about EQ and depression and anxiety. So what is the effect or impact of depression and anxiety on EQ? Also, you could do a reverse question of that, is what is EQ's effect or impact on depression and anxiety? So do you want to tackle that one, Sue?
Yeah, so, let me first say that, if you are experiencing anxiety or depression, we are, we're kind of a workplace solution. So, there are counselors and professionals that can help you with your individual, awareness and management of your stress and anxiety. However, that said, what we know about EQ is that knowledge of yourself and how you're feeling in any given moment, and what that impact is, and what you show the world, and what you choose to say or not say, how you choose to engage or not, that's all rooted in emotional intelligence. So I would say that emotional intelligence is a skill. It can be learned, and what we provide are very practical strategies to help you increase your self-awareness, your self-management, your social awareness, and relationship management. So there's definitely an emotional component to stress, anxiety, and depression. So though we're not, you know, we can't give you professional advice as psychologists. We are industrial psychologists, and we can, you know, tell you how it affects your work, but also at home. That was a very long answer. I'm sorry about that. I hope that made sense.
Quite okay.
Okay,
If you're okay with it, Sue, we do have a few more minutes, and there's some really good questions here that I would love to continue posing to you if you're okay with that.
absolutely. And before I go on, if I didn't answer that last question for whomever asked it, could you please just make sure you type out your question in the survey, and we'll make sure to get you a short, concise answer. Maybe better than what I just gave you.
Great, thanks, Sue.
Okay.
Great point here. EQ has helped many folks at my company with their home relationships, as well as the relationships with clients and colleagues.
Yeah.
If people take the training seriously, it can be life-changing. We run into trouble with folks who think they don't need EQ. So do you have any insight to get through that barrier? We've heard this many of times, especially in leadership roles, where many think that since they are at that leadership level, that they are already an expert per se in EQ. But there's actually some interesting findings about EQ skills and job levels.
Right, right. So, I think the best way to make a case for emotional intelligence is to figure out what isn't working for someone. There's something that's keeping people up at night, whether they want to admit it or not. So, you don't have to have those answers, but I think you can just provide some questions to get people thinking, like, really, are you really nailing every single client interaction that you have? Is it an A+ every single time? Yes, no, maybe. That's something to think about. So I think asking some interesting questions could get people thinking. I know that in our training program, the way our program is designed, we're not giving people answers, but we're getting them to really think about, okay, well, this is what I do right now. I'm finding 66 strategies here in Emotional Intelligence 2.0. I'm not doing a bunch of those. Maybe I should try it. Another idea is back to what we talked about a couple of minutes ago, which, a 360 or multi-rater assessment will show you how someone sees themselves compared to how other people see them. And that gap is quite telling. So, that might be something to consider as well. The data doesn't lie, even if somebody has their blinders on.
Definitely. We have gotten a number of questions, Sue, regarding EQ as it relates to hiring and the hiring process. A
Okay.
question that has come in is regarding HR. How can a company handle conducting an EQ appraisal as it relates to employment? Should it be as a pre-employment assessment, or is this conducted after employees join? And what's a way to detect EQ when you're interviewing somebody? Great questions. These actually kind of all relate to a program that we had specifically all related to hiring for emotional intelligence. So the ability to be able to see and hear signs and signals that can help you get a sense of somebody's EQ level. So you'll be able to detect both high and low EQ behaviors in the interview process.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a really long answer. So I think I'm going to try to shorten it. But again, if this is something that you're particularly interested in, maybe mention it in your survey and we can make sure to get you some longer answers. The long and short of it is during the hiring process, you are looking and listening for important data points. What are people sharing? What are they doing or not doing? And to Kate's point, we have a program, we have some information that can help you figure out what to observe and how to go deeper beyond, your the typical interview questions. There's not a pre-employment assessment out there that can be used for selection with emotional intelligence, unless you go down a big old rabbit hole with a lot of, specific validation studies with an assessment for particular positions at your organization. It's long, it's expensive, so that's not something that's easily done. But we do have kind of a laundry list of things to look for and listen for. We also have some interview questions in this training program that can help you get deeper and kind of uncover some EQ data. One other thing to mention is that emotional intelligence is a skill. It can be developed. I'm sure I said that probably 5 or 10 times at this point. So when you're considering hiring someone, asking a couple of EQ questions can give you an idea of where someone is currently walking in the door. But ultimately, training programs, executive coaching, or what have you, that's centered around emotional intelligence can help people develop and grow their EQ once they're on board. So that's another very, very long answer. So if I didn't answer your question, just put it in the survey and we'll get you your answers.
Great, thanks so much, Sue.
Yeah.
In regards to an actual, just a quick point in regards to hiring and EQ, there's not actually, in our hiring program, there's not actually an assessment involved in it. You can't really use an EQ assessment for selection. There's actually legalities involved in that. What that program teaches is it actually helps you craft interview questions specifically to your organization that help really identify whether an individual candidate is a good fit for your company's culture. And it also helps you identify and get the answers to see those high and low EQ behaviors during the interview. So there's no assessment involved, and that is for actual legality reasons in the workplace. So for those of you who are HR pros on our attending today. I'm sure you're well aware of all the laws and regulations regarding that stuff, but just wanted to share that quick point with all of you. Thank you all of you for hanging on, and we appreciate these were all really great questions. We are at about the 45-minute mark, so I do want to make sure that we respect everyone's time today, and Sue, your time. I do appreciate you taking the time to answer all these questions for us. Great questions that came in, and I hope all of you really found this content insightful and helpful. Really, EQ, in a nutshell, it's more important now than ever. For you, for your team, and your organization. So again, here's that link to that article that has some of the research involved in it that we discussed today. Additionally, feel free to register for any of our recorded webinars that are on our website. You see that link on your screen there as well as you can read any of our articles that are provided. As I shared, you will get a survey that will pop up momentarily. And if you have any additional questions or comments, you can also add that in there. And if you would like information about a specific offering from Talent Smart EQ, we're more than happy to reach out and follow up with you on that. Sue, do you have any closing thoughts with the with our attendees today?
I do, and I wanted to tell everyone that our next public webinar is Wednesday, February 24th, and we actually have our topic that you'll be able to sign up for soon. So be on the lookout for it. The topic is EQ, the bridge from diversity to inclusion. It'll be at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. East Coast time. And I think I'm going to be your speaker again. So hopefully that doesn't frighten anyone away. And I hope that you can all make it.
Thank you so much. So we will be providing the link to register for that webinar on our website very shortly. Okay. For those of you who do not follow us on LinkedIn, we'll also be providing it on there as well. And we'll also be sending it out via our newsletter. So make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter as well if you're interested in staying up to date on all things EQ and Talent Smart, what we're up to, as well as EQ literature. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you everyone for joining, and we hope you have a great remainder of your day today.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye-bye.